Like your local Geico agent could
out there. It's a great cause put on by the Titans. The Zone was involved. Bunch of different law enforcement agencies from across the state competing in a flag football tournament. So I was out there at about 9 o'clock. And then I got a couple of texts that made me feel like I should go home. So I left at about 10 a.m., got home, was not really sure of what was going on. And then you saw the news break from not Ian Rappaport, not Adam Schefter, but this Atlanta, I don't want to call it obscure because it does have a substantial following, that broke the Julio Jones news. And I want to give proper credit this morning because nobody else seems to. But I could not get over the idea that this, we'll call it niche sports website, first broke the Julio Jones news. It then took the internet by storm because you saw Schefter putting it out there, our friend Diana Rossini putting it out there, Ian Rappaport. Everybody started confirming this news that the Tennessee Titans had traded traded for Julio Jones, giving up a second-round pick this year, a fourth-round pick next year, and getting Julio his contract and a sixth-round pick in 2023. It's an exciting time if you're a Titans fan. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because there's a lot of people telling you otherwise. I'm surprised by how negative. There's a pretty substantial negative reaction to all of this from larger NFL media. I listened to a couple of different people that I like, that I respect, that I trust. Kevin Clark from The Ringer. I saw, Colin Cowherd is what he is, but he was one of the people down on this particular situation. Mina Kimes, my friend from ESPN, she did a podcast today with Bill Barnwell, and everybody was largely kind of wet blanketing this move by the Tennessee Titans. Today is not the day for that. We will talk later in the week about what it means long-term, what it means financially, what they'll have to do, because there's a lot of different hoops that they have to jump through. And Lucas said in his update that they've signed Julio Jones. You got to pass a physical first, bud. You know that, right? He's here today. It's not pen to paper quite yet. I'd back it down a little bit. You excited? You jumped the gun? What's wrong? What happened?
Julio!
That's right. That's what they're going to say when he catches passes for the Tennessee Titans. That's what they're going to say when he catches touchdowns. They don't even do it for A.J. Brown.
Julio
is in the building. You love to see it. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Because what we're going to talk about over the course of this morning is how much closer does this actually get them, right? Once the newness is worn off, you've had an opportunity to sleep on it. Now you're looking at the rest of the AFC in particular. Sure, the league at large and the defending Super Bowl champions are sitting in the NFC, but where does this actually put them amongst the people that they have to compete with? I want to know from you. 615-737-1045. Josh is in Franklin, Kentucky. He wants to talk about Julio. Good morning, Josh.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. This goes out to Mr. Mike Vrabel. I think management is saying that they expect to be a good team this year. But if you go into this year, lay 10 yards off of receivers, let the other offense go up and down the field, scoring points, making Wentz look like he's the next coming of Tom Brady, then you're not only going to be out of Tennessee, you're going to be out of the NFL. So hopefully Mike Vrabel can put a little bit of defense together, or this offense is just going to be in a scoring contest and get beat.
Man, John, is that a threat? We're starting the show. Here I am coming in. I'm walking in. I'm expecting it's going to be nothing but loading lines. It's going to be nothing but praise for John Robinson, for the Titans, for Amy Adams Strunk, for the guy who plants the grass seed at St. Thomas Sports Park, for everybody who's associated with the team. Instead, Josh is coming in here with threats for Mike.
Better not mess this up, Mike.
Don't you screw this up.
Stay low.
Where is he?
Shut up. Stay low.
I can't get over that. That is not how I thought we were going to start the radio show today. People threatening the not just the immediate career, but like future opportunities in the NFL. Mike, damn it, if you screw this up.
90% of Titans fans woke up jubilant this morning that Julio Jones is going to be a Titan, but Josh woke up
pissed.
With fumes at Mike Vrabel. I swear to God, Mike.
That's delightful. 615-737-1045. So you've seen some of the details on this come out, right? You have Peter Schrager of Good Morning Football saying that John was on a pontoon boat making the deal at Percy Priest Lake. My one, I desperately need confirmation of that fact. I want that to be so because he was in his office at 3:30 that afternoon. They made the deal at what? About between, I think it was a little after 10 a.m. local time, Central Time yesterday. So they make the deal. John's on a press conference with us at 3:30. He's wearing his Titans hat. Great PR. You love to see it. He's all over the NFL Network. He's all over ESPN, all over SportsCenter. But if he actually made this deal on Percy Priest Lake, I have two questions. One, was he worried about the cell signal? And two, why the hell is John Robinson? John makes money. Okay, what is he doing on Percy Priest Lake with all of the drunk college kids who are, there's probably needles and bottles floating around? Why go to Center Hill? John, you make money. You could do better than this. Now, I don't know if there's better cell signal at Percy Priest than there is at Center Hill or like Tim's Ford. But step it up. So then you have that. And if you guys want to weigh in, you guys are streaming in on the comments, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, 1045 The Zone TV. You can basically hang out in the studio with us. I want to know how much closer you think they are today than they were, Saturday. Because Sunday morning they made the trade. Over 24 hours ago, before you knew for certain that Julio Jones was going to be a Titan, how much closer do you think they are now? Because I've gone back and forth on this. But here's what we'll say before we get into, how much better the team is, what this means for the offense, because frankly, I think some stuff has to change. Given the personnel that they now have, the different coordinator that they now have, I think that you're going to see maybe not wholesale changes, but I think their strategy is going to adjust a little bit in a way that might sound interesting to you. So we'll talk about that at length over the course of this morning. But let's start here. Because heading into this offseason, after last year, after Jadeveon Clowney, Vic Beasley, Isaiah Wilson, he who must not be named, your guys' opinion, and I don't want to speak broadly, but I would say, maybe our friend V-Love might put it at 92%. 92% of the people were very, very upset with the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. You won the division. Your offense looked fantastic. Your defense sucked out loud. And you lost. It was one and done in the wild card weekend to the Baltimore Ravens. The moves that you made last year did not pan out. The things that you had done, or the beautiful thing that you had built on one side of the ball was wasted because you couldn't get a third down stop. So then we head into this offseason. And I've gotten a fair amount of questions about, well, if John Robinson doesn't get things right or John Robinson doesn't get the situation corrected, is his seat hot? Does John Robinson have a hot butt, hot seat talk already for the general manager of the Tennessee Titans heading into year 6? And the one thing, and I've told you this several times, his position with the organization was never in jeopardy for as poorly as things went from a personnel standpoint in 2020. Now, if things continued to spiral, then of course he would be under some pressure. But the one thing, I'm looking at this objectively, you're looking at this as a Titans fan. I think both of us can agree that if you were to ask one thing of John Robinson, it would be to not get scared, to not get gun-shy, for lack of a better term, based on how things kind of blew up. Understanding that they won, understanding that they got the division title for the first time since 2008. Don't stop being aggressive when it comes to personnel. So then you have this Julio Jones situation. And for me, there's a handful of reasons why I think it worked. But John actually talked about this yesterday because he had a handful of questions about this. And basically what he said, I'm not talking about gun shy. What he said is that their intention was to stay aggressive, that they were basically, going to keep firing.
Yeah, it's, John, we take stock of the ones that, certainly don't work out and try to learn from those mistakes. But I don't think we try to be too frivolous with what we do, but we got a chance to shoot, we shoot, and we felt like this was a move where we needed to pull the trigger, and glad that we did.
Glad that they did. Titans general manager John Robinson, a little bit of not an emergency press conference, good PR, to get him out there in front of the people as soon as humanly possible so that the news cycle would have John Robinson's face and a Titans hat all over it. Maybe he ran out of hair gel that day. I don't know. John rarely rocks the ball cap.
He was coming off the lake.
Coming off the lake, that's right.
Kroenke says to leave Percy Priest out of this.
Percy Priest is disgusting.
No stray bullets for Percy Priest.
No.
I'm picturing a giant yacht in the middle of Percy Priest Lake.
All of the stray bullets, not for Percy Priest. They're in Percy Priest. All right? They get caught in the engines of the boats.
And J-Rob's eating lobster on the roof of a yacht like Wolf of Wall Street style.
We're not leaving, and we're taking Julio Jones with us. 615-737-1045. We are going to take your reaction to the Julio Jones trade. Coming up next, I see Chuck, Nate, Cedric. You all will be up first. If you want to get in, the number is 615-737-1045. And I'll tell you exactly how I feel about the Tennessee Titans as we sit here today in terms of Super Bowl contention. That's what's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
The Titans have made it very clear to the entire NFL. They're going for it this season by bringing in Julio Jones and his 848 career receptions to Music City.
I'm excited to add Julio to the football team. He's excited to be a part of what we got going on here in Nashville.
Talk about it here on your home for Titans football. 1045 The Zone.
I have to admire just the complete and utter lack of shame in doing that. And everybody with that organization, with the fan base, everybody should be feeling good based on the idea that the Tennessee Titans have now acquired Julio Jones. We're going to get into some information about what exactly went into this trade, and then we'll talk about exactly where this puts them in terms of contention, because I'll be honest, my initial impression, and I'll get into a little more detail on this here in just a second, I don't think this drastically changes the balance of power in the AFC. But I do think it is a move that was absolutely essential for the Titans to make. First, we'll go to your phone calls because you guys have been waiting patiently. 615-737-1045. Chuck is in Clarksville. He wants to talk about Julio. Good morning, Chuck.
Hey, guys. Hey, I just think what I see out of this is what a baller move, John Robinson. When you think about what he's done this offseason, Bud Dupree, baller. Julio Jones, baller. You get Janoris Jenkins, a very good cover corner. You get Josh Reynolds, who's an up-and-coming wide receiver. Now you've got 3 wide receivers that have to be accounted for every play that can't load the box on Derrick Henry. I just think John Robinson told Todd and Mike and Shane, all right, I've given you everything you need. Let's go out and go for it.
Completely so. I did an interview this morning. Thank you for the call, 615-737-1045. If you want to get in on the conversation, I did an interview this morning with a bunch of my friends who do the SB Nation football show. And basically what I was asked was, how much does the pressure increase now just based off the Julio Jones trade? How much does the pressure increase now on John Robinson as the GM and Mike Vrabel as the head coach? And I said, yeah, I'm sure there's a degree of pressure on these two, but I'm looking at the coordinators. I'm looking at Shane Bowen and Todd Downing. I'm looking at them and saying, boys, you got a lot of new toys to play with, and a lot of people looking at you as to how exactly you're going to make it work. Now, the good news, if you're Bowen, you can only get better. You can only improve off 19 sacks, one would think. I think they could trip and fall into at least 22 this year, and it be an upgrade. You could trip and fall into a better third down conversion percentage allowed than the Tennessee Titans had in 2020. But if you're Downing, it just got so much harder for you to live up to the expectations, not just that Arthur Smith set, but that Julio Jones brings. There's going to be some pressure. It is a good move, of course, by John Robinson. It signifies, really the only win, and we'll get into this as well, the only win for the Falcons is that they don't have to pay Julio Jones anymore, because another transaction would have required them to keep some of this salary on. The Titans were willing to take the vast majority of it. The Falcons will eat just about $7 million, a little over $7 million in dead cap, but it's nowhere close to what they would have had to do had they done the deal with another team. But yeah, you're looking at the coordinators and you say, Todd, man, you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, and it's in the form of Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, and A.J. Brown. It's a lot of beef.
Then handed the keys to a Ferrari. Hey, don't wreck it.
Not just a Ferrari, a Bugatti, a Maserati, all of it.
Someone who's had his driver's license for 2 years gets handed the keys to a Ferrari.
He's got the fleet, and he's got the general insurance, and they're saying, all right, boy, go get him.
Okay.
Sure, guys. Dad? 615-737-1045. Let's go to Nate, who's cruising on I-65 this morning. How we living, Nate?
Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to somewhere going down Interstate 65. I'm actually passing the Rocket right now in North Alabama, so I'm glad I caught you before I went out of coverage.
Okay.
One of the things that little bit of a history lesson, and it's total conjecture here, but your earlier caller, John, I think his name was, I'd like to apologize for whoever pissed in his Cheerios this morning. But one thing about I think this is a good sign for the defense, because back in 2008 when Julio signed with Alabama, the kid has always won. He's used to winning. And one of the conversations that he had with the Alabama coaching staff early on was, if I commit to you guys, then who's over on the defensive side to see to it that I don't catch all these balls and we lose every game?
Right.
Now, I have no proof of this, but logic would dictate that the same conversations were had because Julio wants to win. Otherwise, if he's coming to another team with a decent to good offense with no defense, then he might as well have stayed in Atlanta. But this is just a sign that I think some other good things are going to continue to happen with the defense, and I believe it so much that I put money down for Tennessee to win the AFC today.
Nate is financially invested. Things we love to see. Thank you, Nate, for the call. We appreciate the context. In fact, John Robinson spoke a little bit about that yesterday with us on his impromptu Julio Jones trade Zoom call. Now, it was funny to get that email because I'm in my head. I'm thinking, well, one, this is great because I've got to write today, and I did write an article about basically what a masterpiece John has put together at this point, from the depths that they came from when he took over in 2016 to what the roster looked like in 15 to what they have now. But so my initial thought was, well, this is great. John's going to talk. I'll have some quotes. We can put audio onto the radio show tomorrow morning. But then my secondary reaction was, oh, damn, everybody's going to ask the same question, and it's going to be 20 minutes of John Robinson recycled content. But it ended up being good. We got some good nuggets out of John, like, for example, what the caller Nate has just brought up, in that nothing seems to matter more to Julio Jones right now than winning.
I think in my discussion with Julio, what's his number one goal? It wasn't about targets, wasn't about that. His goal is to win, and that's the mindset we're looking for. Whether that's 9 targets, whether that's 2 targets or no targets, contribute to winning the football game. I think that's the mindset that he has, and that's the mindset we have as a football team.
Now, somebody tell me what Julio Jones is going to say after he gets 0 targets in a game. I think that might have been just a tad hyperbolic. John's allowed to do whatever he wants today, for the most part, basically. Like, nobody can't tell John Robinson nothing, which I'm sure he loves to see. But if a game goes by and Julio Jones doesn't have a target, 1, the fan's going to lose their mind. 2, Todd Downing's head's going to be on a spike because of the amount of pressure that he's going to be under. And 3, Julio Jones probably going to be pissed. But also, I mean, this is something that was stated prior to him being traded to the Titans, that all that matters to Julio Jones at this point in his tenure, after wasting away in largely irrelevancy with the Atlanta Falcons, this man wants a ring. He wants to win. He wants to be competitive. You don't want to be the butt of the 28-3 jokes and the face of the only person who continued to perform throughout the course of that comeback victory in the Super Bowl for the New England Patriots against the Atlanta Falcons. 615-737-1045 is how you join us here on the radio show. Cedric is in the borough. He wants to talk about Julio. Go ahead, Cedric.
Hey, Buck, Lucas. All 3 of us need to go into business producing two-tone blue confetti, because in February 22, February 23, it will be flowing all along Broadway, baby. I said it back-to-back Super Bowl champs, and we need 69,000 folks in Philadelphia. Yeah, I said Philadelphia. I know it's Nissan, but we need to bring it back to Philadelphia. 69,000 folks saying, Julio! I'm out.
Julio! That's what they're going to say when John rolls out the two-tone blue confetti. It might be a good time to get into the confetti business. There's two things that I take that back. There's 3 things that I want to invest in Nashville at this particular date. 1, real estate, which I'm already in on. 2, a parking lot, because there's not enough parking garages in the city of Nashville, and I think there's millions of dollars to be made if somebody wants to go in on a joint venture with a parking lot, or go in on a joint venture for a parking lot with me. I think we could make a killing. And then, for all the people who want two-tone blue confetti, because, of course, the Titans are winning the Super Bowl next year. Like, this is a given fact. Now, here's what I'll say before we get to the rest of the calls, because a bunch of you have called in. I want to make sure we get to everybody. Kroenke says, get off our show. He's yelling at me. Now, what I'll say is that when I looked at this scenario prior to them making the deal, for really any team that was not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and not the Kansas City Chiefs, my thought was, if you're not those 2 franchises, you need to trade for Julio. Now, the Titans have a particularly unique situation. They can afford it with a few maneuvers, really just one at this point, given that Kevin Johnson, everybody's pissed off at Kevin Johnson or pissed off at the Titans for signing Kevin Johnson, the corner who ultimately just retired after being a first-round bust for the Texans on Friday. Well, the good news is, for all of you who are pissed at him, he just gave you back $2.25 million that allows you a little more financial flexibility.
Might be more valuable than what he would have given you as a player, to be honest.
1,000%. The money that you just got back is going to help you make this Julio Jones thing work in a way that's not going to hurt you as bad. So shout out to Kevin Johnson today, whose best accomplishment as a Tennessee Titan was to retire. That's not very nice, but you know what I'm saying. So I looked at this from a 1,000-foot view. Let me remove myself from Nashville, Tennessee, where all of the fans are, of course, thinking about the implications of this, what it's going to look like in Nissan Stadium, and it's going to be fun when they open up against the Arizona Cardinals on both sides of the ball, because there's a lot of offensive firepower, a lot of fireworks that are going to be in this season opener when the Arizona Cardinals travel to Nissan Stadium. What is that, September the 12th? I do believe. That's going to be, and you guys couldn't have picked a better time to be able to come back to Nissan Stadium. I'm so excited to see a full house once this football season actually begins, with now all of the implications, all of the excitement that's going to fill in around this team. But what I will say, and I'm not doing this to be, stubborn. I'm not doing this to be controversial. I don't think, and I'll get into this later in the show, because I don't think necessarily Julio Jones is the tipping point for the Titans to win the Super Bowl. Does it make their job a hell of a lot easier? 1,000%. But they still ultimately have to compete with Kansas City, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Baltimore. I think those are the biggest threats to you right now. You should be able to handle the AFC South in stride, even if Carson Wentz has some kind of career resurgence, and even if that defense is as good as it was a season ago, which I think would be tough to do. Defense is difficult to translate year over year. I say that objectively. I still think that they have a bit of a hill to climb to be able to compete with the top of the conference, the class of the conference, which currently is the Kansas City Chiefs. But I'll explain more about why I think this Julio thing is a big deal, and it's not because of Julio. We'll get to that later in the show. In the meantime, we'll continue to take your reaction. Omar is in Houston. He wants to talk about Julio Jones. Good morning, Omar. How are we?
Good morning. Good morning. Man, I just want to start and say I think that this move we made was the best offseason acquisition that we could have ever made. I think this is the start of a Super Bowl run if the defense clicks, which I think they will. Also, I'm just wondering why all these other platforms for other teams are doubting Tannehill when the stats the last 2 years speak a different language. Play action pass, with two generational offensive geniuses, at their respective positions, it's not rocket science. Man, I'm just crunk.
You should be. Hey, I saw the Colin Cowherd clip that went viral yesterday. I've listened to a lot of people that I respect, because I'm trying to get a gauge on how the rest of the world is looking at the Tennessee Titans right now, and is looking at Julio Jones and what expectations are being placed upon them. And largely it's being dismissed. I read an article on The Ringer this morning about this situation where it said, yeah, the Titans are now a better fantasy team, but I don't know if Julio Jones counts for an additional game, an additional win or not, which I found fascinating. Especially, and this gets into a larger conversation that we have so often. It's one of the most tired storylines, narratives that there is when it comes to sports talk radio in Nashville. The national media doesn't care about my team. Why? Why won't they talk about the Titans? Why don't they care about the Titans? Why won't they watch the Titans? Why are they speaking from a big platform in an uninformed way about the Titans? And I would tell you, who gives a damn? I mean, Who cares? But there are a handful of reasons why people are looking at this skeptically, and immediately as Julio Jones comes on my television on First Take right now in the studio, I understand why there is a degree of skepticism about the player, about the value, and about where he is physically in his career. But nothing that I saw going back, and I watched a lot of tape last night of Julio Jones from the 9 games that he played before he got injured, dealing with a hammy. This is still a top 5 player. This is I mean, you want to talk about the caliber of player that you're adding to your team. And I say this in all seriousness. I don't think I'm going over the top here. Where does Julio Jones rank in terms of like the best wide receivers in the history of football? Because I'm looking at him. There is not another player not named, I hate to use double negatives, but not named Jerry Rice that has as many receiving yards through 10 years as Julio Jones does. I know the passing numbers have changed. I know that Matt Ryan has been a good player at various points. Matt Ryan has been an MVP of the NFL at a time in his career. I'm not diminishing what the quarterback has helped him do, but also Julio Jones is a talent unlike very, very few that we have ever seen. Julio Jones is the best wide receiver. Lucas, tell me if I'm being out of line here. Julio Jones is the best wide receiver of our generation.
Yeah, of our generation. And that's what the numbers say. I mean, that's not any kind of hot take. And Julio Jones gives the Titans the best wide receiver duo since the franchise moved to Nashville. And I don't think that's outrageous to say either.
Oh, no. By any stretch of the
Not close.
imagination. This is a franchise that when it comes to wide receiver luck has been godforsaken. Like, A.J. Brown is the first wide receiver not named Derek Mason that we've seen this franchise legitimately develop into a top threat. Out of here with your Kendall Wrights. Who's the guy that played at Tennessee that was on this roster?
Justin Hunter.
Justin Hunter. Out of here with Justin Hunter.
Toriel Green Beckham.
Out of here with Eric Decker. Like, all of it. Send it into the sun. This is by far and away the best receiving situation that the Tennessee Titans have ever had in the history of their franchise. And I'm going back as far as the Houston Oilers since 1960. It doesn't get better than this. But what does it actually mean in terms of wins and losses? We'll discuss that on the other side. We'll continue to take your calls. I see Lou, Paul, Tony, Michael all waiting patiently on the phone lines because I want to know whether the Titans, whether you think, and I understand you might be biased, but I want to know whether you think the Titans are now the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC. That's what's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
There's a man going around taking names.
And his name is Julio Jones.
Yes, sir.
He joins 3 others in two-tone blue.
Figaro! He's Ryan Tannehill. Going for A.J. Brown. He's got it. Derrick Henry, 52 yards for the King.
Together they make up the 4 horsemen of your Titans. The trade has been made.
And we felt like this was a move where we needed to pull the trigger, and glad that we did.
We break it down.
Touchdown, Titans!
On your home for the Titans.
And his name that set on him was death. And hell followed with him.
104.5 The Zone.
does Julio make? This was the Titans GM.
Yeah, I mean, when word got out that he might be available, I started looking at it. We looked at him, coaches looked at him, how he might fit in offensively. I mean, he's big, he's fast, he's tough, great with the ball in his hands, willing blocker. I think a lot of the things that we ask of our receivers, which, all the locals know, it's get open, catch, and block. He certainly checks those boxes and has done it at a high level for a lot of years in the National Football League. And, did our due diligence just with the film work and the evaluation piece about what he might add to the team. And again, excited that we were able to kind of get some closure to it today.
Yeah. Don Davenport doesn't like soccer because there's no closure. No closure in a draw. Don Davenport at least got some kind of sports closure today with the Titans getting Julio Jones. Now, this is just the beginning. The transaction is what starts it. This is not the finish line. This is not, it feels like Christmas Day if you're a Titans fan. It's not, it's not Christmas Day quite yet. Julio Jones is what gets you, hopefully, if you are a fan of this team, to Christmas Day, which is to open up the box and see Tom Brady's head on a spike because you've just won the Super Bowl over him. I think it makes them wildly more competitive. I think it makes them it makes the expectations of them fair to put on them and say, okay, I did not think that they were going to be able to keep pace offensively with what they did last year. Now I have removed those inhibitions, and I expect them to be able to do this again this year. I think that the offense is going to drastically change. I do not think this makes them better than Kansas City. I think that the Colts should not be favored in the division. The division favorite should be the Titans. I do think the Colts have the ability to muck this thing up for you a little bit because I do believe them to have the overall deeper team. I believe that you're going to need to get lucky and not just have the pieces in place to get Julio Jones. It's about sustaining. Derrick Henry's best asset is sustainability. The Tennessee Titans are putting a lot of eggs in not just one basket, because you have the AJ basket, you have the Derrick basket, the Tannehill basket, the offensive line basket, and now Julio Jones. So you've got your assets spread out at least. But there's a lot of different dominoes that will fall if anything happens to this asset that they have now acquired. But I think that it puts them in a better position than Buffalo, Cleveland, and certainly Baltimore. I really don't have any inhibition saying that the Titans should be now the second best team in the AFC. And you should hold them to that standard. That's what you should expect. I understand that your corners, who you blew up your secondary, you nuked it. You went out and got a whole bunch of new guys up front and in your defensive secondary to try and rectify last year's wrongs. It would be difficult for them to be as bad as they were last year, understanding that right now Caleb Farley and Elijah Molden aren't even practicing. Well, Molden doing a little bit. But Farley, your first-round pick, not even practicing yet. Bud Dupree is not yet here. We don't know when he'll be available. Danico Autry is not yet here. I will expect to see a lot more of these guys now that mandatory minicamp is officially upon us. But how much closer does it get them to the Chiefs? They're not the Chiefs, but they're getting a great deal closer. 615-737-1045. Tony is in Mount Juliet. He's been waiting patiently to talk about Julio. Go ahead, Tony.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air, Tony. Go ahead.
I just want to get my 2 points down. For the Titan fans, and I'm a real Titan fan, but I'm a realist. Like, we can't expect Julio Jones to come in here and get 100 and 1,300. And what I mean by that is 100 receptions, 1,300 yards. He's going to be a good decoy to open up A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry and Josh Reynolds, in my opinion. I don't know the contract details or any of that. Hopefully that they didn't give up a lot of money or whatever, but I have no idea what the contract strategy is. But Julio is 33 years old. He's not going to be that same Julio that we've seen in Atlanta for the past 10 years. He's a good addition, but in my opinion, he's going to be more of a decoy than a threat.
Can he be both? I think he can completely be both. That's what he's been in Atlanta. Ask Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has eaten as a direct result of Julio Jones being a decoy.
A.J. Brown has as many touchdowns in the last 2 seasons as Julio Jones has in the last 4.
And I think that's a product of the offense. Derrick Henry, Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis, they've had the ability to spread the ball out. Adam Humphries, even though his availability has been less than, Julio Jones can be a decoy and also be an incredible asset for your football team. Because when A.J. Brown was dealing with knee injuries over the course of the last season, Corey Davis was there to pick up the slack. But the biggest criticism, rightfully so, is that Corey Davis was not the kind of consistency that you need from a top-line, top-option wide receiver. And I'm not here to dispute that A.J. Brown is still wide receiver 1. I just think Julio is 1B. And I think that's how your offense has to change as a result. 615-737-1045. Paul has been waiting patiently in Franklin. Go ahead, Paul. How are we this morning?
Hey, man, love your show, dude. I love your commentary. I understand how I've been listening to sports radio for 30 years. Lord have mercy. And I understand you got to have the other side of the coin. You got to kind of, well, I don't know if it's that good and all that. Let me tell you something, dude. This was a great acquisition for the Tennessee Titans. And talking about eggs in the basket, well, brother, everybody's got eggs in the basket. I mean, you don't think Tampa Bay ain't got eggs in the basket with a 45-year-old quarterback? You don't think Kansas City got eggs in the basket with a $500 million quarterback? Everybody's got eggs in the basket. My point is, dude, is that you say everybody's dismissing it largely. Well, I tell you who's not dismissing it. Go check the latest Vegas lines.
Yeah.
Go check the line. They have virtually cut the Titans' odds of winning the Super Bowl in half with just this acquisition. My final comment is this. If we can keep Julio Jones healthy, we are a major threat now to win the Super Bowl. We're a major threat. That don't mean we are going to win it, but we're a major threat. I'll tell you somebody who didn't want us to get Julio Jones. You know who that was?
Who's that?
The Kansas City Chiefs did not want the Tennessee Titans to get Julio Jones.
That's exactly right. Hey, Paul, call whenever you want. Paul might listen. We got a lot of great callers around here. Paul might have been my favorite in the 4 months doing the show now. Paul might have been my favorite caller. 615-737-1045. John Moss on Twitter says, talk that talk, Paul. You'll love to see it. We'll continue to take your reaction. We have loaded phone lines all morning long. I'm going to tell you who else is, because Paul had it spot on. Paul had it spot on. The Kansas City Chiefs did not want the Tennessee Titans to get Julio Jones. But there are 3 entities in football that should be kicking themselves today. I will tell you who they are on the other side and so much more. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Finally, after weeks of talking about it, Julio Jones is coming to Nashville. The Titans have shown you that they're all in next season by adding a 7-time Pro Bowler to their offense. Now we want to hear what you think on your home for Titans football and new home for Julio Jones. 104.5 The Zone. For Titans and Falls football, 104.5 The Zone. WGFX Gallatin, Nashville. A Cumulus station. Trending now at 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:03. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Well, A.J. Brown and the rest of you asked. And the Titans delivered. The Tennessee Titans have agreed to a trade with the Atlanta Falcons that sends 7-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Julio Jones to Nashville. Atlanta receives the Titans' 2022 second-round pick and 2023 fourth-round pick, while the Titans receive a 2023 sixth-rounder and Julio Jones. Jones brings nearly 13,000 career yards and 60 career touchdowns to Tennessee. The 32-year-old played in just 9 games last season, dealing with a hamstring injury. He had 771 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tennessee and Vanderbilt both won their regionals over the weekend. The Vols avoided an upset by Wright State on Friday with a walk-off grand slam by Drew Gilbert to win 9-8, and then took the regional final on Sunday 3-1 over Liberty. Vanderbilt went late into the night against Georgia Tech in the regional final at Hawkins Field. Isaiah Thomas with a grand slam in the 11th, helping Vandy to win 14-11. Now both teams advance to the Super Regional this coming weekend. Vandy will host East Carolina, and Tennessee will host the winner of the Eugene Regional, LSU and Oregon, playing the regional final tonight, first pitch at 9 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The most successful streaming and podcasting talent in Nashville is Buck Reising. And now he has a radio show to go along with it. Right here, it's Buck Reising on 104.5 The Zone.
It seems, of listening to sports talk radio. He put a smile on my face. He's got the chat going crazy. Everybody wants to know Paul's Twitter @ so they can interact with him, because apparently he represents all of you today. But we'll see if Lou, who has been waiting patiently in Nolensville, we'll see if Lou can't follow it up strong. What's going on, Lou?
Hey, I agree with most of what you have to say. I'm very happy today, and I think the thing that people are running around with is we have a horrendous defense. Our offense is better, absolutely. Our offense is I would say anywhere from 10 to 20% better. Just having him on the field, whether even he produces so much, he's going to spend a lot of energy on the other defense. But we don't have a stud sacker. We don't, and our D-backs have been horrible. So I feel like people are just focusing too much on the offensive end as far as saying that all of a sudden we're going to be better than the Chiefs. I think we're right there with them offensively for sure. I mean, we're just like, 1 and 1A, but the defense is the thing that worries me. I love the acquisition. I was at work and told somebody who was a Titan fan and a Alabama fan. He just started screaming. I love the acquisition. I'm just hesitant to say that we're going to overtake anybody until we fix that defense.
So I appreciate the call, Lou, and your patience because I know you were waiting there a while, and I hate to dismiss you outright, but I mean all the Titans did on defense this year is sign Bud, and this is from my buddy Austin Stanley over at A to Z Sports because he had somebody tweet this at him too. So Austin, I thought, put it together quite concisely at Austin Stanley 81. The Titans haven't done anything to the defense except sign Bud Dupree, signed Danico Autry, signed Janoris Jenkins, re-signed Jayon Brown, drafted Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden, and Rashad Weaver, who, pending legal issues, is going to be on the field to help your pass rush. Maybe you don't have an outright, what did he say, sacker?
Right.
But I don't want to dismiss what he's saying because the last time he saw the Titans defense on the field, he's right. Well, actually, that's not true. The last time you saw the Titans defense on the field, they looked pretty good against the Baltimore Ravens.
It was a complete opposite of the narrative that the regular season carried.
It was an upset to us all. Yes, Lamar Jackson had a 48-yard touchdown run because Lamar Jackson, you can only contain him. You can't outright stop him. He's going to get some on you without question. But the last time I saw the Titans defense, it looked pretty good.
It was the offense that let the Titans down in the wild card game.
Yeah, they took away A.J. Brown. They smothered Derrick Henry, and the Ravens went on to, get beaten by the Bills. But still. So all of those things, here's what I'll say to Lou in Nolansville. Lou, your offense is I don't know if it's better. I don't know if it's outright better because you're taking one guy in Julio Jones and you're looking to replace three. Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Adam Humphries. Maybe those three guys equals a Julio Jones. I'm not going to do the math.
But that's not taking into account the addition of Josh Reynolds.
It is not taking into account the addition of Josh Reynolds.
Or Des Fitzpatrick. Because I think that ultimately you have a more balanced football team. You don't want to live the life that you lived last year, where your offense does all the heavy lifting just for the defense to poop itself on third down. You don't want to live that way. So your offense needed retooling because there was no way you were going to be able to keep all of the players that had to end up going either through cuts for roster, for financial purposes, or in free agency because they were going to cost too much. You're basically paying Julio Jones the same amount as the New York Jets are paying Corey Davis. Doesn't that make you feel a little bit better? And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, and as we said, I think they could trip and fall into 20 sacks this year. They had 19. 19 in 2020. It's the worst. It's the fewest amount of sacks for a team that made the playoffs in NFL history. 19 is anemic. It is horrendous. I understand your trepidation. I also understand that you've got a whole new defense. Even if the coaching staff is largely the same, and I'm not saying you should implicitly trust Vrabel or Bowen or this coaching staff. I do think that they have put you in a better position so that if they fail, it's not quite as drastic as it was a year ago. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Neil is in Hendersonville. He wants to talk about Julio. Go ahead, Neil.
Hi.
Hi, Neil.
So I think Julio Jones will be a great addition because, if we have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, down on the deep ball, if we need a Hail Mary to win, they can both, be together and we throw it down there and we have a high chance of one of them catching it because they're both amazing receivers.
That's certainly true. Neil, how long have you been a Titans fan?
5 years.
5 years? How old are you, Neil, if you don't mind me asking?
9.
Okay, so 5 years of 9 years of life, 5 years of Titans fan. Who do you have an AJ Brown? Whose jersey do you have? Because I know you got to have a jersey.
I have AJ Brown, and for Christmas, I'm a huge Titans fan. Mm-hmm. For Christmas, I got a card to get dollars off in the locker room, so I'm gonna get another jersey soon too.
Okay, are you going to be upset if Julio Jones ends up wearing 11, but you have an 11 AJ Brown jersey? Is that going to be detrimental to you?
No, it's okay.
Hey, Neil, we really appreciate the call, buddy. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too.
Neil, everybody. All right. Neil may be my favorite caller. What a stud. Christopher Lee Cronky says Cronky agrees. He is my Neil is my new favorite caller. Austin Y agrees. Yes, I guess school is out, so Neil doesn't have somewhere to be today. So he's listening to Sports Talk Radio like everybody, because everybody wants to talk about Julio. I love that. That put a smile on my face. Let's get one more in before we bring Mike Miracles into the mix from Broadway Sports. Let's go to Leonard in Nashville. He wants to talk about Julio. Leonard, you got to follow up Neil. I wouldn't want to follow him, but you can try.
Well, I'm not going to try to follow him. I just want to, with the Titans have, in the past, we've had some receivers that we've traded for, drafted, or free agents that came in here. Yancey Thigpen hurt himself getting off the plane. We had Nate Washington, but it's a different administration, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and see how they handle this Julio thing.
So has this? Let me ask you this, Leonard, before you drop off. Has this improved your opinion of John Robinson like substantially, or are you still kind of, because you sound kind of hesitant about a different administration from the ones of Titans eras past, I guess.
Well, in the eras past, we had a bunch of other parts to the puzzle too, and then we got in Yancey Thigpen, and everybody thought that was going to be their cure-all. But he hurt himself getting off the plane some kind of way. I don't know if that's what happened, but this administration, we're going in the right direction. I think the Titans are, but it's just like, let's just wait and see.
Okay, which is fair. They're not winning the Super Bowl today. They're not winning the Super Bowl on June the 7th, but they can get a little bit closer. We'll continue the conversation with Mike Miracles of Broadway Sports. We'll get into the X's and O's of it. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans have made it very clear to the entire NFL. They're going for it this season by bringing in Julio Jones and his 848 career receptions to Music City.
I'm excited to add Julio to the football team. He's excited to be a part of what we got going on here in Nashville.
Talk about it here on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
So and they had fun, but I mean Julio Jones is Julio Jones. So I mean, come on, let's be real here. This is a generational talent that the Titans have added at the position that they have never like really truly been great at. I mean, they flirted with greatness the last couple years. Obviously, AJ Brown's fantastic, but this is just injecting nos into a machine that was already rolling pretty good here.
Which some of the callers would disagree with you, because I had Leonard call in from somewhere I can't remember and say that this is basically Yancey Thigpen, which of course delights me to no end, because sports talk radio callers are 90% of the reason I took this job. But realistically, like, there's never been a combination of two wide receivers like Julio Jones and AJ Brown that have played for this franchise. I think let's start here, Mike, because your expectations prior to them trading for Julio Jones were what for this deal actually finding some kind of finality after you've put out your cigarette, after you've finished your basically it's post-coital at this point is what I'm looking at on the Zoom. You're glowing practically. But once you got through all of that, what was your relative expectation heading into this situation?
As far as heading into the trade or heading into the season prior to the trade?
The heading into the trade discussions and then as a result the season, because of course everybody had to keep their expectations measured, and meanwhile people are in my mentions and your mentions telling me how slow Des Fitzpatrick looks in individual drills.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's I think expectation for the trade, I kind of thought as this thing continued to roll along and the Titans, the reported interest from the Titans remained kind of steady, floating around out there as far as all the reports that were out. I started to feel like, yeah, the Titans have a real shot at this thing. Obviously, you never feel like anything's a done deal until you see it come from a Diana Rossini or Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport. But, I was still a little bit stunned yesterday when the news officially came down that it was happening. The fact that they got him for a second plus a sweetener, I think is pretty good value. It's not a home run necessarily, because look, he's Julio Jones, and I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, Julio Jones, he should have gotten a first round pick. 32-year-old players in general, short of a quarterback maybe, just because their life expectancy in the NFL is so much longer. But a 32-year-old player at a skill position just does not fetch a first-round pick. It's virtually unheard of.
Right.
And so I'm not surprised that he went for less than that. I think it's a pretty fair deal all around. Like the Titans are getting a guy who is an absolute difference maker still, and one of probably still the 10 best receivers in the game when he's on the field. And the Falcons get, a second round pick plus some, and get to kind of reset their books a little bit. And it's probably got a sting for Falcons fans just seeing, the icon that is Julio Jones, best player in franchise history, walk out the door with still some gas left in the tank. That's the thing. This is not Randy Moss, which we saw here. This is not Andre Johnson, which we saw here. This is Julio Jones, still close enough to his prime to be Julio Jones here in 2021. He is not a shell of himself by any stretch of the imagination. This guy still has juice. He still has, gas in the tank to keep going for this year, probably next year too. So I think you've got to be pretty ecstatic about it. And then as far as expectation for the season, I think this moves the needle from, yes, win the division and compete in the playoffs and maybe you win a few games and go on a run, to the expectations are you are among the final teams competing in the NFL. You're at least an AFC championship appearance. And I really think the bar should be set. You should have Super Bowl expectations with this team now. I don't think you should be afraid to say that. This is a team that was close before. You're adding a huge talent. They've already, we've talked about the defense being retooled all offseason. You're going to have 6 new starters over there. They spent $120 million and, 3 of their first 4 draft picks on that side of the ball. There's enough here to believe that this team can make a serious run in the playoffs.
Oh, without question. You are getting a player who is at the tail end of his prime, but should still be, when all things are healthy and understanding that he's had knee, foot, and last year a hamstring issue, this is still a player who, when right, is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, hands down. And I think that I was always confident, and honestly, behind the scenes, they were extremely confident about their ability to acquire Julio Jones just because of how weak the market for him was. I was kind of taken aback by it initially, but then I looked around and there is so many talented young wide receivers in the NFL right now, Mike, that there just didn't seem that many teams who were desperate to acquire a player like this, understanding the draft capital and the finances that you would have to give up and then take on respectively. But with what this offense now currently consists of, and understanding that it is Todd Downing's charge, and he will see a substantial amount of scrutiny, depending on, well, regardless of how this thing goes, whether it goes good or bad, Todd Downing is going to be under a considerable amount of pressure. Would you change what the Titans offense fundamentally is because of the acquisition of Julio Jones? Because Derrick Henry is the show. Ryan Tannehill is an incredibly, I believe you've put it before, ruthlessly efficient point guard of this offense. But is there any need from your perspective to maybe not wholesale change, but kind of alter the nature of what exactly this thing looks like?
Yeah, I think it's more tweaks than it is overhauls for sure. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you have to change a ton to fit Julio Jones. Because I mean, what Julio Jones is really is a supercharged version of Corey Davis. I mean, he is a bigger, faster, stronger, still even at 32 version of what Corey Davis is. And oh, by the way, he runs the most incredible routes that you'll ever see for a guy that's 6'3", 220. And I think you plug him in across from AJ Brown and you sit there and dare defenses to make a choice. You have to choose. Do you leave your safeties back and protect against Julio Jones and AJ Brown and help your corners, but you're leaving a light box for Derrick Henry to feast on? Or do you come up and take away Henry like most teams have tried to defend the Titans in years past and leave your corners on an island against AJ Brown and Julio Jones? And almost no teams in the NFL are going to have two corners that are good enough to man up against AJ Brown and Julio Jones. I mean, that is an elite class of player that can do that. And even the best of the best may not win that battle every day. So I think against bad defenses, this offense is going to absolutely feast. Against good defenses, I still think they're going to present some major matchup problems. And look, at the end of the day, football is about winning matchups. You know, there's scheme stuff that puts your guys in the best position to succeed. And obviously Downing does need to probably tweak some stuff to use Julio to the best of his capability. There are routes that Julio Jones runs that he runs. There's a route that Kyle Shanahan literally calls the Julio route.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And he runs it so well that it is named after him. And he is the only guy that really runs that like that. They need to put that into the offense, right? Like they need to do some adjusting. But as far as what they already do, the play action shot plays, a play action shot play with Julio Jones running off the safety on a deep post and AJ Brown coming underneath on a crosser is the fuel of nightmare for defensive coordinators. I mean, that is, I don't know what you do with that when you have a 247-pound Derrick Henry staring you in the face and daring your linebackers not to commit to the run, right? So I don't know how you deal with that.
You hope to God that your defense can swarm tackle because you're gonna. I mean, they're gonna get their yardage either way. It sounds like.
Yeah, and all these guys have run after catch ability too. I mean, Julio fits right in with that. I mean, he's a large guy. He's better after the catch than he probably gets credit for just because he's so good at everything. So I think you're looking at an offense that fits Julio Jones. He's played in an offense similar to this before when Kyle Shanahan was in Atlanta. This is very similar to the offense that the Titans run now. Obviously, Matt LaFleur was in Atlanta with Julio Jones and Kyle Shanahan and, brought that offense roundabout to Tennessee by way of LA. And that's still the offense that Todd Downing is primarily going to be inheriting and continuing and tweaking. But the bones are going to be the same. The language is going to be the same. I think this is a great fit, not only for the Titans, but for Julio.
Yeah.
Because he's stepping into a familiar offense, and he's stepping into an offense that for the first time in his 10-year NFL career, he doesn't have to be the guy necessarily. I mean, AJ Brown and Derrick Henry have been the guy here. So, maybe Julio Jones does end up being the guy, but what does that mean for what Henry and Brown can do then? So it's a whole lot of problems for defenses coming from the Titans right now.
Mike Miracles of Broadway Sports is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking about the Titans' acquisition of Julio Jones. At Mike Miracles is where you can follow him. Speaking of Mike's, Michael Kist is in the chat on Twitter, and it's bothering me very, very much because it just says, Buck, we got him. Because Kist is, of course, a closet Titans fan. And I demand that Michael Kist come on this radio show and break it down from an X's and O's perspective. He continues to duck me, and it's infuriating that he's just sitting here trolling the chat while he's editing a podcast that I did for his SB Nation site earlier today. This is just the disrespect, Mike. It continues.
I know. We got to get Kist in here, man.
He gets a big podcast promotion or whatever the hell, and now he doesn't have time to do radio at all. But anyway, let me not get distracted. Who should be kicking themselves most today, considering who ended up with the services of Julio Jones? The Jags, the Colts, or the Seattle Seahawks who were as close to in on the Julio Jones sweepstakes as it sounds like anybody, based on Albert Breer's reporting that the Patriots didn't seem all that interested.
To me, it's the Colts. I mean, because they kind of get it both sides, right? Not only are you not getting the guy, and who knows how deep they were in on this thing, but they should have been, right? I mean, I don't know what they're holding all this cap space for at this point. They've got Carson Wentz. Who knows how that's going to turn out? But I think you're not giving Carson Wentz the best chance to succeed when all he's got to work with is an aging T.Y. Hilton who started to show real signs of decline last year. Paris Campbell.
Paris Hilton, what the hell?
Oh my God. Paris Campbell, who is never healthy. And Michael Pittman, who, I don't know if Michael Pittman's great or anything special, but Julio Jones would have really helped, I thought, Carson Wentz. And now you've got to play him twice a year for, your biggest rival in the division. So, I feel like the Colts probably are the ones kicking themselves the most for letting Julio in. You don't want to let Julio into your division, and now they have done that.
B Hibbs has tweeted us during the show. As someone who is 5 years older than Julio, I don't appreciate everyone treating his age as someone who will have like Alzheimer's next year or something like that. When I watch Julio, Mike, just based off of the film that's available of him from the 9 games that he did play in Atlanta, I still see a top 5 wide receiver. I still see somebody who may not be quite at the peak of his powers, but is still without question a threat. The thing that comes up with still as the general sports fan who is looking at this acquisition and looking at maybe their box score scouting Julio and saying, well, he doesn't score touchdowns the way that everybody else in Atlanta's offense seems to. What is the best utilization of Julio Jones in an offense with A.J. Brown? Because I think that even if it is to a degree as decoy, he can still be an incredible asset, and you could do a hell of a lot worse as a second option.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he kind of bridges the gap between what Corey Davis brought you and what they tried to use Khalif Raymond as, right? I mean, Khalif Raymond was kind of their runoff vertical threat guy the last couple years. And, Khalif Raymond was a great story and certainly a good guy and everything, but he's Khalif Raymond. He's undersized, he's not anywhere near the realm of Julio Jones. And that's obviously an obvious thing to say, but you are taking the physicality of Corey Davis and the speed of Khalif Raymond and putting them into one person, basically. And that is meaningful because that threat of the deep post, and the Titans run this concept all the time. It's commonly referred to as Yankee, and it's a deep post off a play action with a crosser coming underneath it from the other side. And they usually max protected. It's just a 2-man route, but they force defenses who are in a 3 high shell with one single high safety and two corners. They force those 3 guys to choose. So the safety has to choose. Does he stay over top of the post, or does he come down on the crosser? If he stays over top of the post, the crosser is running into green grass. I mean, there's just no way that corner can be right against that. You're running into space. It's an easy pitch and catch, and then AJ Brown has the ball in the open field. If you come over down on the crosser, the post is one-on-one. Now, the post being one-on-one with Khalif Raymond running it, not such a scary deal. I mean, yes, he did get some guys at times, but the post with Julio Jones running it is horrifying to me if I'm a defensive coordinator. So I think it just completely changes the perspective that you can look at this offense from if you're a defense. And I think you're also going to see what I just don't know what you do with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is probably still your primary red zone weapon, right? Julio Jones has never been particularly strong in the red zone, but the Falcons also, again, Julio was the guy. So if you're getting into the red zone and you're going to take somebody away, it's Julio. Now, if you're in the red zone and you're facing the Titans and you're going to take someone away, I think you probably still start with Henry. And maybe take your chances on the wide receivers making a play. But I think Julio is going to have more opportunities in the red zone than maybe he did in Atlanta, just simply because of the attention that Derrick Henry is going to draw away from him.
Mike, I asked John Robinson yesterday about, what they will do at tight end, given that they were having conversations prior to trading for Julio Jones. And he basically said that it would be difficult to add a veteran, both from a draft capital standpoint and from a salary perspective. Are you comfortable with the offense that the Titans have as currently constructed?
I would be comfortable simply from the standpoint of, I think Anthony Ferkser does not need to be a huge weapon for you to have success on offense now. I mean, because you would be silly not to focus your passing attack very strongly on AJ Brown and Julio Jones at this point. And Ferkser in Reynolds and Fitzpatrick and these other guys can be around to pick up more of the scraps, right? I mean, those are the guys that are going to get primo matchups. They're never going to have any attention paid to them. And if they can win their matchup, then they get the ball. So Ferkser, I think, can give you enough in the passing game that I'm not terribly worried about. Now, his blocking, certainly questionable, but Swaim's going to handle the heavy lifting there. And if Ferkser can block enough to just be on the field in 12 personnel, that's probably all they really need from him. So I'm pretty comfortable with it as constructed. If your tight end being Anthony Ferkser is your biggest question on offense, and I know there's question at right tackle too, but if those are your biggest questions on offense, you're in pretty good shape, especially when you have 4 or 5 Pro Bowlers littered around the other spots. So I think if they don't make another move at tight end, I'm still okay. But I still have to say, call Delanie Walker. I mean, Delanie Walker, why not call him and bring him back at this point, right? I mean, he doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to give up a draft pick for him. Come chase a ring, Delanie.
Look at you. Stop it. Mike Miracles of BroadwaySportsMedia.com, broken headphones and all. He's living today. Michael, I appreciate this. I will talk to you again on the podcast later today. Of course, you can check out Mike's podcast, Football and Other F Words, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Now get the hell out of here with your 37-year-old Delanie Walker. Stop it. You're a glutton.
Come see me, Delanie. Come see me.
All right. We will come back. We will continue to take your reaction. You guys have called in. I see Philip in the borough has been sitting there patiently, so we'll lead with him. Coming up next, I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
There's a man going around taking names.
And his name is Julio Jones.
Yes, sir.
He joins 3 others in two-tone blue.
Figaro! He's Ryan Tannehill going for A.J. Brown. He's got it! Derrick Henry, 52 yards for the King.
Together they make up the 4 horsemen of your Titans. The trade has been made.
And we felt like this was a move where we needed to pull the trigger, and glad that we did.
We break it down.
Touchdown, Titans!
On your home for the Titans.
And his name that sat on him was death, and hell followed with him.
104.5 The Zone.
for the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1045 is how you get in on the conversation. So let's do this first because what Philip brought up is it was a spectacular sports weekend just in general. I do want to give credit, of course, to the Tennessee Volunteers, to the Vandy boys for both winning their regionals. The Vandy game went late into the night. I was not able to stay up after the U.S. men's national team game against the Mexico team.
Oh my God,
it was incredible. It was the excitement was so much that I simply ran out of gas. I was exhausted by the end of the evening, and I got into bed. I crawled into bed because I had been drained from a day full of Julio Jones press conference writing. I did an emergency A to Z Sports prime time in the middle of the day. Everybody in my family is pissed at me because I'm trying to run around. I'm trying to get everything done. I'm trying to keep up with work, and what's a weekend, which is fine because my job is ridiculously fun, and why not? If I gotta have a Sunday to get some work done, so be it. So then I'm moving on to the rest of the sports world because I knew that we were going to talk about Julio for 3 hours today, and that's fine. I'm happy to do it. It's exciting. You guys are excited. You want to talk about it. We're going to do that for you. But certainly, the Vols Regional in Knoxville, to be able to win these games, these 3 games, the way that they did in exciting fashion, in walk-off grand slam fashion, in the case of the first of these 3 games, and then to be able to win in the championship game against Liberty last night, I mean, it was spectacular. And then Vandy does what Vandy does in baseball. They just continue to win in a way that, like Alabama, is a bit monotonous. Their greatness is a bit monotonous, but it is still worthy of praise today. So incredibly, all of the congratulations in the world. I know the goal is ultimately Omaha, Nebraska, where the College World Series resides, and they have a super regional for the both of them that they will now have to go through. But tremendous college baseball in the state of Tennessee over the weekend.
Trevecca today.
Okay, Trevecca today at 1:00. Who are they playing in the Division II College World Series? Do we know that?
They fell to, I was just looking at it. They fell to Tampa, the defending national champs, in their first game, and I'm not sure who they're playing today.
615-737-1045 if you want to jump in on the conversation. And then on top of the Buck, it's okay to admit you watched the Logan Paul Mayweather fight and not soccer, says D Good. I watched them both. I did. It was disgusting. The Logan Paul. Nobody won. How do you not have a winner? How do you drum up that much excitement? And then I read the article on ESPN today because I'm like, well, what the hell happened? Somebody explain to me what happened. And it just says Logan Paul hung in there for 8 rounds against Floyd Mayweather, and everybody made $100 million.
If you chose to watch that debacle over the USA-Mexico game, which is maybe the most entertaining 2 hours of sports I've seen in a long time, then that's on you.
What a fantastic day in the world of sports, especially for us here locally, not just the Julio Jones situation, but for the world of soccer, for the world of college baseball, spectacular in and of itself. So then there is this breaking news that has just stumbled across my Twitter timeline. Nick Saban has received an extension entering his 15th season. Saban gets a contract extension through February of 2029. By the end of that contract, Nick Saban will be 77 years old. So they must have been listening to John Robinson's press conference yesterday, because John Robinson brought up the fact that they'd had a conversation with Nick Saban about Julio Jones and exactly what he brings to the team. This was the Titans GM.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he can run the full route tree. He's got really good size. He's got a long catch radius, good catching skills. He's strong with the ball in his hands. Still think he can push the field down vertically. He's willing to go in there and dig out a linebacker or a safety. That the Seahawk game was a fun game to watch last year with him and Jamal Adams, who's an outstanding player as well. They were going at it. You could see the competitive fire and spirit out of both of those players who are at the top of their game, and we'll see kind of where he fits in with what exact position. I think that's to be determined. We got to get him here and get to know him. He's an extremely smart player. Coach Saban spoke really highly of him, And, I'm excited to see how he factors in for the offense.
So apparently, Saban got another great review for one of his fantastic college turned NFL players in the University of Alabama. Said, you're continuing to get us good headlines. Why don't we sign you up through 2029? Nick Saban gets a contract extension today. But that's interesting that they called, and we'll get to your phone calls here in just a second. Speaking of calls, 615-737-1045. 615-737-1045. But Albert Breer reported that Vrabel called Nick Saban to have a conversation about Julio Jones. And you might be asking, well, why is that necessary? This is not a player who's coming out of the draft process right now, and Vrabel is doing just some background work. He's been in the league for 10 years. What could Nick Saban add to the story of Julio Jones at this point, given that he has been out of Alabama for the better part of a decade? But it is something that I don't know that if I'm a Titans fan, I would say that I'm glad that they are doing their due diligence to that degree, because I've heard that Julio can be a little bit of a pain behind the scenes. Now, I'm not talking diva behavior. I'm not talking about Antonio Brown going to France and getting in a cryotherapy machine and freezing the bottoms of his feet off. Like, nobody is saying that Julio Jones. You say that's a good reference, wasn't it, Lucas?
I forgot about that. Just went totally rogue, froze his feet off.
I was pretty. I didn't even write that down. I brought that up off the fly. I'm pretty proud of that one.
I would have said like Odell Beckham proposing to like a kicking net or something, but that's a good one.
So yeah, we're not. But I've heard he can be a little bit obstinate behind the scenes. But why wouldn't he? If he's been in Atlanta for 10 years, they haven't done anything with him besides choke away a Super Bowl, besides waste one of the biggest wide receiver talent of an NFL generation for 10 years in Atlanta. We'll continue the conversation on the other side, because I want to talk about it's now the Titans' division to lose. It may have been that before Julio Jones got here, but now it is definitively written. It is set in stone. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, what they say is it is known. It is known that the Tennessee Titans should repeat as AFC South division champions. But I want to talk about how big the gulf is, or exactly how much separates the Titans versus the hated Colts. We'll do that with your phone calls coming up next as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Oh, yeah. It's a great day to start the week. Yeah, and I can't think of a better way than welcoming Mr. Julio Jones to the greatest team of all time, the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, and not since the days of the Mega Powers have I built a powerful presence, yeah, and a force so unstoppable, yeah, that it's going to carve up defenses like a turkey on Thanksgiving Day. Because I have flown with the eagles and I have slithered with the snakes and been everywhere in between. And there's one guarantee in life, and that's there are no guarantees in life. Yeah, because the Tennessee Titans, though, putting the league on notice, putting them on blast right now. They're going to climb to the top of the mountain, grab the brass ring, and bring home the Lombardi Trophy. Say it with me. Everybody listening to the radio waves right now, all the Titans fans. It's time to tighten up. Dig it!
This is Damon Amendolara with a CBS Sports Minute, sponsored by 303. 303 Products, premium protectants and cleaners. Keep your car looking like new longer. So what are the Clippers? Are they the team that sleepwalked through the first 2 games against the Mavs? The squad that lost 3 home games against Dallas in this
we have spent so much time on Julio today that I feel that you haven't had enough time to enjoy your U.S. men's national team game last night enough. Do you want to celebrate that further here, or is it shut up and talk Julio, dummy?
For the most part, it's probably shut up and talk Julio, dummy. And we will have a chance to address this tomorrow at 9 p.m. on the Nashville Soccer Show.
Oh, that's right. You have your own show.
Yeah, I'd have my own show. But important to acknowledge just the absurdity of the 120-plus minutes in Denver, Colorado last night.
Josh Graham just writes in on Facebook Live, shut up and talk Julio, dummy. Yeah, that's
probably
going to be
the way to go today.
That's going to be the line.
Understandable.
I understand. 615-737-1045. We're going to take your phone calls. We're going to get into why am I believing in the Titans, and it really isn't about Julio Jones. But first, we'll go to Kenston in Memphis because he's been waiting quite patiently. Good morning, Kenston.
What's going on, Buck, man? Question for you, see if you understand this perspective. One, I was thinking that a position group that could be benefited the most from the Julio acquisition could actually be the young DBs. This defensive back group, primarily the cornerbacks, likely throughout the course of the 17-game season, likely won't see a more talented group that they'll be practicing against for the majority of the year. You know what I mean? So just if you could speak on the talent level and, Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden, those guys kind of getting baptized by fire starting out in training camp going against maybe the best wide receiver duo in the league, and the depth that Josh Reynolds and Dan Fitzpatrick bring as well. And also the Julio aspect kind of creates so much more depth on offense. If, God forbid, there's an injury to Derrick Henry and the Titans have to be a more pass-happy offense, well, you got the weapons. God forbid, if Tannehill goes down and you have to go with a backup quarterback, well, he's surrounded by weapons. And vice versa, you can play that game all around the offense. So Julio not only, helps himself by coming here, but he helps the team as well. So just eager to get your thoughts on that, Buck.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the call, Kenston. 615-737-1045. So that's an interesting one because that's immediately, or not immediately, but I started to get more questions like that trickled in once the news came out yesterday and once we did the A to Z Sports Primetime show. And I think that, what's the cliche that they always use, right? Iron sharpens iron. Well, that has benefited, certainly. Guys like A.J. Brown, when you come into the league as a rookie and you're facing one of the better secondaries at the time in the NFL, where you've got Kenny Vaccaro, Kevin Byard, Malcolm Butler, Logan Ryan, and Adoree Jackson, who were a solid unit together. Now, here's where this becomes interesting, because Caleb Farley and Elijah Molden will practice at some point, but they are currently not practicing. So at what point Julio Jones or A.J. Brown and working against them can be beneficial to those two and to this new secondary? Yes, I understand why you would draw that connection, but they have to be able to participate at greater length. Of course, it'll happen at some point, but at this point, they are not available. Molden more than Farley, but not by much. Then there's the other side of this where, AJ's not practicing right now either. He's currently going through the rehabilitation process. And Julio Jones is famous for not practicing much. In fact, the amount of snaps that Julio rests during a game almost amounts to losing a game of Julio Jones. Sustainability is incredible for Julio. He's been able to do it at a really, really high level for a long time, without question. But to say, the expectation should immediately be that these guys are all going to come into practice together and they're going to work against one another. I'm not saying Julio Jones isn't going to practice with his new team, but I am saying that Julio Jones is famous for not practicing and then being available for the game on Sundays and doing all of the things that Julio Jones does. So I imagine it will be a good experience for these young secondary players when they are available. At which point they are available, we do not yet know. 615-737-1045. Maurice is in the borough. He wants to talk about Julio. Good morning, Maurice.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air, boss. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Breeze, man.
All right, I got you. Go.
Yeah, that's fine. Check it out, dude. We had so many draft picks last year to, they got injured, wasn't able to play, and then COVID, they wasn't able to practice. And then, of course, we lost a bunch. But got me on the spot. I can't remember all of them.
Maurice, I know who's on the roster, brother. You got to give me your point.
Well, the defense is going to get some rest because we've got a massive offense. That last card they put in there with bringing in Julio just opens up everything for everybody on the offense because, like they said, they can't pack the box. They can't double team nobody. We've got too many hot shots there. And, and then Brian Tannehill, man, he's just going to be better. It's his third year. We're going all the way. It's depending on who can stay healthy. So, give me your feedback on what you think on that one, buddy.
Sure, Maurice. I appreciate it. He's going to give me the whole roster before it gets to his point. Buddy, I know who plays for the team, but I appreciate the call anyway. Okeechobee just tweeted me the current caller and the gift from the strength coach in Waterboy. Too funny. Yeah, I understand why everybody is super optimistic today. You absolutely should be. And again, I don't think this changes the balance of power in the AFC. I think it does change the balance of power in the AFC South. It just further entrenches it to make it in a way that you don't have competition right now within your division. You simply don't. And I want to get into this on the other side because we wanted to make sure that we got your calls in. But I do think that there's a conversation to be had about the Titans and their biggest rival in this division, the Indianapolis Colts, because the Colts continue to be favored. Now, the Vegas odds have obviously shifted since we have seen Julio Jones come to the Tennessee Titans. The markets have adapted to this latest acquisition, and it's enough to make a difference in terms of their win-loss total, their Super Bowl odds, all of the things that people care about. But with the conversation about the Colts, I think there's a significant gap between these two teams. And I'll explain what I mean, as well as why I am currently a believer in the Tennessee Titans, but not because of Julio Jones. We'll do that coming up next. You'll hear from John Robinson as well. And, of course, your calls, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans have made it very clear to the entire NFL. They're going for it this season by bringing in Julio Jones and his 848 career receptions to Music City.
I'm excited to add Julio to the football team. He's excited to be a part of what we got going on here in Nashville.
Talk about it here on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
DraftKings Sportsbook is not only my favorite sportsbook, but also America's top-rated sportsbook app. I love using DraftKings Sportsbook because it's easy to navigate, has plenty of instructions for new bettors, and nearly limitless ways to get in on all the action. My friends and my family have been loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and I know you will too. Listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in site credits. All you have to do is download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code WGFX when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Simply bet on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game, and if you do, if they win, you will claim $100 in free credits. That's promo code WGFX for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 years or older and present in Tennessee to bet. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789.
Thanks for calling 1-800-GOT-JUNK. This is Sarah. How can I help?
I'm thinking.
What if
Titans. Now there becomes a continued conversation about this for reasons that I can't understand. Last year, I got it. Last year, I thought they were much more level, a more level playing field, a more competitive battle for this division. Then what I saw the Colts do is not just get worse on offense because they lost Anthony Costanzo, who retired from football, their stud left tackle. Now they have replaced him with Eric Fisher, who I believe to be on the same kind of timeline as Bud Dupree. We're not sure when he'll play, but he got injured fairly late in the season. I look at this Colts team and I say, I think they got worse at quarterback. Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz, based on last year's sample size, is a downgrade. The defense is still stellar, but I do believe they'll take a step back there as well. It is nearly impossible for defenses who perform at a high level to carry that over from year to year. Hell, we saw the Titans not be able to do it. When they had such a stellar defense, it was necessary for them to have a studly defense, and they struggled to keep up that level of play the following season because it's just a different kind of toll that playing defense takes on your body. It is difficult to recreate that kind of sustained success. So all of these things combined for the fact that the Colts didn't spend money on anybody outside of Eric Fisher on a one-year, just north of $9 million deal to kind of help replenish their blind side. They did not add significant weapons. They brought back T.Y. Hilton to Indianapolis, but largely it's still the same group of wide receivers. And then for me, I look at this and I say, well, why are we still having a conversation about the Indianapolis Colts when the Titans have improved on defense? Because they could not get worse on defense, one would imagine. That's a projection, but a safe one. I'm confident in saying that the Titans will not be as bad on defense in 2021 as they were in 2020. The offense has lost some pieces, yes, but overall they've added a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver who may not be at the peak of his powers, but he's at the tail end of his prime. That's okay. They have done well to retool the unit that ailed the most. They have done what they can to replace the production. About 45% of their receiving totals that they lost in Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, and in a limited sample size, Adam Humphries. And yet the Colts continue to be looked at as the AFC South darlings by everybody outside of the state of Tennessee, it would seem. The only point of contention that I would bring up in favor of the Colts is I believe them to be a deeper team. I think that they have their top-end talent is not as good as Tennessee's right now, but I do believe them to have greater depth. And that does matter over the course of a 17-game regular season schedule. It is difficult to sustain physically under normal circumstances. And now we've added an additional game to the mix in all of this. For me, I think that I just don't understand, which is it's not something that I should probably say as a professional talk host and I guess what they say what I guess the station sells me as an NFL Titans expert, because that is my trade as Titans reporter. I'm not out here claiming my own accolades, but I'm sitting here saying, given my background and the work that I do, I don't know what the hell everybody else is looking at. And this is not the first time that we've had the conversation, but still it continues. And then there's the doubt about Ryan Tannehill. Now, it was not a big majority, but Lucas, can you pull up Stephen Ruiz's tweet for me? The one that we, was so seemingly ridiculous to us that we felt it necessary to try to get Stephen Ruiz on the radio show today. Now, he's not going to be able to join us, but I do think that the tweet itself bears bringing back up, because it's not about Tannehill specifically, but it's about the Titans in general. What did Stephen Ruiz of USA Today have to say yesterday?
That Julio is still a great player, and acquiring a great player is obviously good, but kind of a weird move for the Titans, TBH. Still looks like a 9-10 win team to to me. And he followed it up. I would not care if I was a Titans fan, though. It will probably be fun, and that offense was looking as boring as an offense featuring Henry and Brown could possibly look. Just not sure about the OC, and the defense will probably be mediocre at best.
That's okay. All they need to be is mediocre. Like, I'm not looking for a top 5 defense. I'm looking for not 29th. And then there's these clips going viral of more prominent, more famous national media members in sports talking about this acquisition of Julio Jones. Specifically, this clip from Colin Cowherd. Lucas, do we have that available in a way that is easy for me to go to? Colin Cowherd has apparently some new podcast venture, some kind of new product that he's trotting out for people to consume, and a lot of people consume Colin Cowherd. I'm not hating the player, and I'm not really hating the game either. But I listened to Colin Cowherd yesterday because this clip was going around, and it echoed a lot of the same sentiments that many people that I work with and that I know, many of their opinions about just how different the Titans are from the Colts. This was Colin Cowherd yesterday on his own Twitter account.
So, to Sunday morning, Julio Jones, Atlanta, traded to the Tennessee Titans essentially for a second-round pick. My prediction, watch the overreaction by the media. Julio Jones, at this point in his career, still great, but has a lot of injuries. Tennessee whiffed on their first-round pick last year. Drafted a corner this year that's had multiple back surgeries. They have huge secondary issues, offensive line issues, and a regrettable pass rush. I like Mike Vrabel a lot, but there's a reason the Colts should be favored in this division. Colts have a better defense. Colts have a great coach. Colts have a significantly better offensive line. Listen, the Titans lost Corey Davis. They go out and get Julio Jones. But Ryan Tannehill's played above himself the last 2 years. Why? Because he's had a great offensive coordinator who just jettisoned the Titans to become the Falcons head coach. You don't think coordinators matter? So you still have offensive line issues. You're kind of one-dimensional with, Derrick Henry essentially is the show. You stop Derrick Henry, force Ryan Tannehill to throw, it's not the same football team. It's a wide-open division outside of the Colts, who really are the best roster, best general manager, excellent coach, premier offensive line. But, Julio Jones is now filling the gap, and he's better than Corey Davis. But the idea this takes Tennessee to a special place, they're not Baltimore. They're not Baltimore. They're not Kansas City. They don't have Cleveland's roster. They're not Buffalo. They're not the Colts. The good news is Houston's in the division, so they won't finish last.
That's Colin Cowherd yesterday. I know that Cowherd really good at what he does. Because even me, as somebody who works in this industry and understands when content is put out there that's trying to rile people up, like, I recognize what that is, and it still made me look at him and be like, Colin, what the hell are you talking about? Offensive line issues? This is one of the best offensive lines in football, and that's not, but the way that he finished it off, which is I wish I had the confidence and ridiculous opinions that I could just say whatever I wanted in front of the microphone and make millions of dollars off of it, because that's what Colin Cowherd's doing. For him to say the good thing for them is that Houston's in the division so they won't finish last. That's outrageous.
Quite a jab.
It's really, listen, as people who do this, Lucas and I recognize what this is. And also, it still made me laugh out loud with how stinging it was and meant to rile up Titans fans. Now, ask our friend Diana Rossini how Titans fans are to deal with in the mentions. She claims that they're one of the meanest fan bases in all of the NFL. God forbid she bring up Marcus Mariota on national television.
Maybe it's just a Nashville thing, because we went through this with Nashville Soccer Club. Diana Rossini hears it from Titans fans. We all know what Vol Twitter does. Maybe it's just the state of Tennessee. Very passionate people.
No, Vol Twitter is a cesspool without question, but it's a fun one. Titans Twitter is a different animal entirely. And then you see what the Preds did yesterday. Speaking of crap that I hate, You see what the damn Nashville Predators did yesterday?
Has since been deleted.
Yeah, because they're so, again, I am not trying to get the Preds social media person fired. But shouldn't you know, if you're the Preds social media person, about copyright infringement issues?
No, my question would be, what copyright issues would there be? Just because they're not the ones that
They
took that
used a
photo,
picture that wasn't theirs.
Yeah, that's true.
And they didn't have the rights to use it. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. Like, not only did they violate, and it's so stupid that the only time we talk about the Preds is when their Twitter account pisses me off about something. But the way everybody's clout chasing yesterday, all right? Everybody's riding the Julio Jones wave. So then they take they take the picture of Julio Jones that they don't own the rights to. They put him in gold. They tag the Titans because the Preds want a piece of Julio Jones clout.
Fair weather, idiot.
Exactly. Who is this social media person, and why do they suck at their jobs? Is there a team of them? Is it just one person? Is he or she being given directions? Hey, make this as annoying and useless as humanly possible. And there will be, 20% of sports fans in Nashville who love it because they're Preds fans, and they'll slurp everything that you do. But for the rest of us who are looking at this, V-Love tweeted me this morning, sent me this picture and said we weren't nearly mean enough to this Twitter account. No, I think I'm adequately mean enough to the hockey team's Twitter account. And the good news is they keep giving us reasons to rip them because they look like, I can't say the word. I gotta relax. I forget I'm not on the primetime show. On the internet, I can say whatever I want. Here, I got to play a little nicer. But just get that out of here. Now, what I teased in this segment was I believe in the Tennessee Titans, and it's not about Julio Jones. But we've run out of time here, so that's something you're going to have to tune into tomorrow. Well, no, I know, Lucas, that I have a couple minutes. You guys can't hear that, but he's talking to me in his ear. This is basically a whole show that I got stacked up because it's not about Julio. It's about one other player on this roster that I think makes all the difference in the world. But that's why you're going to have to tune in tomorrow because we'll do it then. In the meantime, before we get to the polls and before we wrap up today's show, Buck's talking with his hands against his Josh Graham. I do. Lucas is Italian.
There's nothing wrong with talking with your hands.
No, I think it's necessary, especially now that I'm on camera. You want me to just sit here and slouch in my chair and hunch over? No, I'm expressive. It's way
I'm tired of this hate against people that talk with their hands.
Why? Who's hate? Are you waving?
I feel like I'm constantly told this.
That's like the Barack Obama. You're like waving your thumb at me very presidentially. Talking with your thumb. Why are people after you for talking with your hands?
My whole life.
Really? Why? That doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I can be emphatic sometimes.
Smashville's Finest says, Smashville's Finest says Buck Reising is having a meltdown on the radio over this. It's not a meltdown. I just think they're bad at their jobs. Do better. Do better. It annoys me. Which is, listen, we're talking about them. So they got the clout that they wanted, I guess. But isn't there a better way to do it? Regardless. Let's do the poll questions. That's what's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
There's a man going around taking names.
And his name is Julio Jones.
Yes, sir.
He joins three others in two-tone blue.
Figaro! He's Ryan Tannehill. Going for A.J. Brown. He's got it. Derrick Henry, 52 yards for the King.
Together they make up the four horsemen of your Titans. The trade has been made.
And we felt like this was a move where we needed to pull the trigger, and glad that we did.
We break it down.
Touchdown, Titans!
On your home for the Titans.
And his name that sat on him was death, and hell followed with him.
104.5 The Zone.
SB Nation NFL show earlier today. The podcast has just been made available. It was myself, RJ Ochoa, and Pete Sweeney from SB Nation. The boys do a great job over there. And then I'll be taping my podcast later this afternoon with Mike Miracles, Lebowski, and Zach Lyons from the Football and Other F Words podcast. So if you have questions that you would like to submit to us, you can do so via my Instagram. If you want to slide into my DMs at Buck Reising, Reising. That's where we take the Music City mailbag questions and we answer them on the podcast. So feel free to do that as well. Now, we were having a conversation about the difference between the Titans and the Colts. And then I got a little sidetracked because Lucas brought up the Pred social media handle, and you know it's a trigger for me. Now, when you look at these two rosters, we talked about the offensive line and the changes that the Colts have had. We talked about who the Titans are getting back in Taylor Lewan. You assume the health of Roger Saffold, Ben Jones, Nate Davis continues to improve. He's going to be due a contract here before long, as a matter of fact. Right tackle, still kind of up in the air, but you feel okay about the number of players that you have the opportunity to create competition amongst. Casey says, last time someone slid in Buck's DMs was a G.G. Bowser's Richard pick. Yeah. No, that's Twitter. My Twitter DMs are a much, much more poisonous place.
Whatever came of that?
Or the Richard picks?
Yeah.
I stopped talking to the guy because he sent me some other dude's Richard picks. What do you mean? Whatever came of that? You think I pursued that?
You didn't feel any journalistic duty to look into that further?
Now, just wait a damn minute, because what were you telling me during the commercial? You said you got distracted. We were having a good conversation about the Colts and the Titans, and then you made it about a Richard Picks conversation.
No, the chat did. The chat made it.
No, the chat did. Oh, yeah, but then you compounded that.
I did. That's just I had to find out what happened with that.
Yeah. What follow-ups did you ask the guy who sent you pictures of somebody else's manhood? I don't know, Lucas.
The story chooses you, Buck. You don't choose the story.
Yeah, well, why is it that story? Unbelievable. So we got a lot of fun content things coming out. I'm writing all manner of articles for AtoZSportsNashville.com. I'm going to fill you guys in via article, by the way, and we'll talk about it tomorrow on the radio show about what this means for the Titans' potential trade for the tight end. Casey adds on YouTube that Lucas would have dug deep on the reporting on Isaiah Wilson's alleged Richard picks that ended up in my Twitter DMs. Dang, Buck, guys sending you ding picks. WTF, says Kelvin. Yeah, that's right. Welcome to my life. Oh, God. How am I going to talk about the Colts roster now? Just give me the damn poll questions. Who's the voice? Who's the Russian roulette today?
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show correspondent, Lucas. Pan, make that poll Zika.
Unbelievable. Go ahead.
Does Julio Jones make the Titans a Super Bowl contender? The overwhelming majority of nearly 800 votes say yes, 89%.
So, it gets them closer, sure. It makes their lives a lot easier, 100%. I don't know that it immediately vaults them into Super Bowl contention. I think that they, given the window that they're in, I think they should be pushing. They are clearly pushing. This move helps them get to their ultimate goal. But whether it helps them compete once the postseason gets here, I know we're doing it's June 7th, so none of this conversation is really going to matter until we know what the team looks like on the field till about a month into the season. That's when I'll have a better understanding. That's when we'll all have a better understanding of what exactly this Titans team is. But it doesn't vault them immediately over the Kansas City Chiefs, but it makes their jobs a hell of a lot easier having to keep up with Baltimore, Buffalo, and the Browns.
The argument could probably be easier made to say the Titans are an AFC championship game contender rather than Super Bowl contenders. That's a fairly big leap for me.
Yeah, but who cares about AFC championship game contender? What?
Doesn't matter.
You could do that with 17 teams.
Really? 17 teams
16.
could make the AFC championship game.
That was dumb.
Who has the better roster, the Titans or the Colts? The overwhelming majority, 95% of over 600 votes, say the Titans.
I think top-end talent, they're right. I think depth, it's the Colts. And that's okay.
Defense, it's the Colts.
Defense, it's the Colts. Defense, and until we see how this group works together and where the health of the group is, I think it's the Colts on that side of the ball for now. And I think they are evenly matched. They are evenly matched prior to the Julio Jones trade. I think the Titans get the edge after Julio Jones. More than anything, it comes down for me to the offense, to the quarterback, to the skill position players, to the offensive line. And, you made the Colts worse by taking one of their players and signing him to a 3-year deal in Danico Autry, who I look forward to seeing this week because, of course, it is mandatory minicamp.
Jimmy Irsay himself said on a local sports talk show, we go as far as Carson Wentz can take us this year. It's no secret.
Why can't Amy Adams Strunk do that? Come on, talk shows. Amy, you're killing me. Got Jim Irsay doing whatever the hell he wants. He's doing media availability. He's doing press conferences. Jerry Jones does press conferences after the game, does his own scrum.
What was the most fun sporting event of the weekend? The Vols Regional, Vandy Regional, USA versus Mexico last night, or Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather? So nearly 700 votes here, and the majority, 47%, say Vols Regional, 35% say USA Mexico, 12% Vandy, 6% Logan Paul. That makes me happy.
Well, that's because it wasn't a sporting event, because nobody won, and it was just done for, YouTube clicks and dollars. And it worked, by the way, because the audience that they were trying to get are people like my girlfriend who doesn't know anything about sports, doesn't care anything about sports, and she knows about Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather because it's something on the internet, and she recognizes that. But sporting event-wise, if you're going to lump the regionals, like the 3-game regionals for both of the college baseball teams, Vandy and the Vols together, the Vols regional was exceptional with the walk-off grand slam in the first night and the way that they were able to find ways to win the last two. They straight up dominated on Saturday, and then yesterday they kept it a little closer against Liberty, but ultimately came out and advanced to the Super Regional on their way to Omaha. Very, very fun weekend of college baseball, to be sure.
Now, Alex Doherty said, and by the way, Trevecca is playing Northwest Nazarene at 1 p.m. First time 2 Nazarene schools play in the D2 College World Series.
Okay, mazel.
Alex Doherty says only one of these events had people unsure if it was beer or urine being thrown on the field.
Yeah, that's the the U.S. men's national team where the Mexican fans are pelting both teams.
So many people caught strays.
They're just throwing stuff from the stands. Some Mexican player looks like he got hit in the head. There's just a full can or a half full can of Four Loko. Just listen, the accuracy on that, impressive. If they were aiming,
somebody had to get hit. They were raining down like hellfire.
They literally just go over to that corner, and all of a sudden there's just garbage being flung onto the field. Both teams catching it. That soccer game yesterday was as entertaining. That's as much fun as I've had watching a soccer game, and that includes like World Cup games. Like, that was ridiculous.
USA Mexico never disappoints,
No.
but that might have been the most fun I've had watching those two play each other.
It was up there. It was up there for sure.
Last one, who should be kicking themselves most after the Titans traded for Julio Jones? Colts, Jags, Falcons, or Seahawks? 74% say the Colts here, and 14% Seahawks, 8% Falcons, 4% Jags. I'm surprised Falcons is so low here.
Yeah, the Falcons had to do it. Everybody understands the Falcons had to move on from him. They could have kept him, but it was imperative for the long-term sustainability of that franchise that they get him off the books. Now the Colts, I think they blew it because they had the money to pay him. They're looking to rehabilitate a quarterback anyway. You make his life a lot easier if he's got Julio Jones on his side, on top of all the other things that they're working through right now, because I'm not terribly impressed with the Colts wide receiver room. It's the Colts. 74% of the audience is absolutely correct.
Well, long-term, just looking at it long-term, the Falcons, you could say, blew it the most, not taking care of the best player in their franchise history. This was like a 2 years in the making kind of thing.
No, they did. But he kept going back to the negotiating table. This is what I talk about when people in Atlanta that I know say he's hard to deal with. Because Julio Jones knows what he is, and he is willing to go back before his time is ready. His contract is expired. Be able to try and pick up a few extra bucks. Our contract is going to keep rolling. Our contract is going to continue to sustain. I don't know who's going to be here longer, me or Julio Jones, but we'll certainly have fun doing it together. And you know who's going to continue the fun, of course. It's your friends Blaine and Mickey. They're what is coming up next. You're on 104.5 The Zone.
Finally, after weeks of talking about it, Julio Jones is coming to Nashville. The Titans have shown you that they're all in next season by adding a 7-time Pro Bowler to their offense. Now we want to hear what you think on your home for Titans football and new home for Julio Jones. 104.5 The Zone.